And welcome everyone. In today's show, we're going to be talking to Gary M. Krebs about his debut novel, Little Miss of Darke County, The Origins of Annie Oakley, based on the true story of an American icon. So don't go away, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to be having more on Gary Krebs. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Writers Corner live show. I'm your host, Brigitte Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa, and welcome to the start of our new lineup for 2021. Our stream today is made possible by StreamYard, Creative Edge, and BeLive Media, helping you to humanize your brand. If you want to know when we go live on our channel, please go ahead and like our Facebook page, and over on YouTube, also, please click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you will get a notification when we are live. In today's show, we're going to be talking to Gary Krebs about his debut novel, Little Miss of Darke County, The Origins of Annie Oakley. But before we do that, let's say a warm welcome to my friend and co-host, Mary Elizabeth Jackson. Mary is a special needs and disabilities advocate and also the award-winning author of the Poolicious children's book series. She lives in Nashville, in the USA, so let us know where you are joining us from. And so without ado, Mary, welcome to the show. Let's see where Mary's gone.
Oh, ha ha ha. Okay, I'm here. I'm here. I forgot I am muted. Yes, because I have noise today around me. But hi, how are you doing? It's so nice to see you. And we're excited. This is the new year. It's our first show of the year. And this is going to be a wonderful year. We're all looking forward to it being brighter and more fun and exciting and, well, maybe some more normalcy, right?
Absolutely. I think we can all do with a lot more normal than we had in 2021. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we're excited about our author today and Gary starting our year out because he's a man who wears many hats. And we're excited to bring him on and learn about what he does and all his roles that he plays. And I can, just tell you from my own experience, he's just a really genuine good guy. And he loves what he does. He's very passionate about what he does. And we are so excited to have him on.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know Gary M. Krebs, he is a novelist, a collaborator, a ghostwriter, a literary agent, and also a former trade book publisher and editor. So he comes with tons and tons of experience. So if you're watching the show live with us now on the replay, please pop us your questions, especially if you are a new author or an author wanting to take things to the next level. Do come and ask your questions because Gary has got lots of knowledge to share. An interesting fact about Gary is also that he was the US editor of the Guinness Book of Records. That was interesting to know about him. And so what we're going to focus on today is his debut novel, which is called Little Miss of Darke County, The Origins of Annie Oakley, based on true story of an American icon, and a very interesting one at that. It was quite interesting when I did a bit of research on who she is and what she did. It was quite fascinating. So shall we not waste any more time and get Gary on the show, shall we?
Yes, let's do it. Excited about it.
I am too. Looking forward to having Gary. And welcome to the show, Gary. So great to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Brigetti, and thank you, Mary, for introducing us all. And Happy New Year to everyone.
Oh, we're excited to have you. So you love this project. This is this is a big baby for you, isn't it?
Well, I work on so many books that it's hard to put one baby over the other. That they're all kind of in different ways. But this one was very unexpected. It's a very different kind of project for me. So I got I fell into it by accident.
Some accidents are nicer than others. So what was it about Annie Oakley's story that intrigued you, and what was it made you want to write this book about her?
So for years, I've been trying to write comic novels and screenplays, and of course, I've been collaborating on nonfiction books and ghostwriting and all of that. So writing a historic novel in general was not anywhere on my radar until about 5 years ago. And certainly the idea of tackling an icon like Annie Oakley wasn't anywhere on my radar at all. But then I saw one of those floating news clips that had gone viral that just had a paragraph biography of Annie Oakley. And in it, it had this tiny little reference to how she had been held prisoner for 2 years in a cabin in the woods. And to me, that just threw me for a loop, because Annie Oakley, being so iconic and so famous and so gifted at what she had done, it just struck me as so odd that nobody seemed to know this little detail about her life. And so it became a bee in my bonnet to figure out what exactly had happened. And it turns out that for 2 years, she really was held captive in a cabin in a remote part of the woods by this young couple. They had a bratty child, and this couple physically, emotionally, mentally, and probably sexually abused her for 2 years when she was a little girl. And
Wow.
the more I dug into it, I realized that Annie, who was then Phoebe Ann Moses, she had an even tougher childhood before then. Her father died. Her oldest sister died. She had 2 other young siblings who died, one in childbirth, one as an infant. And her mother had 7 or so other children and could not sustain the family farm. So young Phoebe Ann Moses became something of an orphan and went from place to place. The more I dug, the more pain I discovered. So she ended up staying at a place called the Infirmary, which for all intents and purposes was an orphanage. And she was taunted by the other kids there and bullied. So when this young couple came to the infirmary and said they needed someone to help them raise their child, young Phoebe volunteered to go just to escape the infirmary. Little did she know that she would be so trapped and in such danger. They obviously didn't have cell phones or anything or anywhere to go.
No 911.
No 911. So she was really trapped. But what really stuck with me amidst all of this was that young Phoebe was somebody who did not have training to shoot a gun. Her father and mother were Quakers and didn't really like gun violence and forbade her from using their rifle. But somewhere along the line, when she was very, very little, she found her father's hunting rifle and started hunting when she was, 6 years old. And she found that she was quite good at it. So at the point that her family had no money and no food, she actually snuck off, and hunted in the fields and actually trapped some animals. She hunted and shot down some animals and fed her family. So it's a pretty remarkable story. She was self-taught, but then the rest of her life, as things progressed and got worse for her, she was deprived of her ability to use her precious rifle. She certainly didn't have access to it while she was held prisoner in the woods. So in my research, I tried hard to find out the names of the couple who held her prisoner. The curator at the museum in Darke County, called the Garst Museum, which is really the Annie Oakley Museum, they couldn't. They know who they are, but they can't reveal it because they're descendants of that family still alive.
Wow.
So I did the best that I could, and came up with calling them Mr. and Mrs. Wolf. And there are a lot of Wolf references in Annie's life, and she did refer to them as the wolves. So when I told the curator that he called them the wolves, she thought that was perfect.
That is perfect, and
so
also adds to the mystery.
Yeah. And to me, it's just remarkable that she had gone through all of these struggles, endured so much. And I don't want to reveal too much, but after she does get through her ordeal with the wolves, it's not long after that she starts winning shooting contests, beating longtime people who had been involved in competitions and stuff, and built her name up to the point that, you know, when she was very young, she was meeting with queens and kings and dignitaries, and became a household name. It's a really remarkable story. And what drew me to it was really that someone like her, she was a regular person. She was somebody who endured a lot, overcame obstacles. And I think by today's standards, I think her story is still quite universal. Things have not changed in terms of child abuse and domestic violence and things like that. So if you think about it, if someone like Annie Oakley had gone through it, imagine what other people were going through at that time up through and before then up through present. So I really empathized with her and felt a lot of passion for her story.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very relatable story, as you said, even in our day. And, you know, right now with the pandemic being what it is, you know, the kind of things that she went through as a child, you know, domestic violence and that sort of thing is things that has been highlighted by the pandemic. So even right now, that story is incredibly relevant and pertinent for our time, even though it's so many years ago. But I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, so I just want to touch for a second, but you have done what I think most authors want to do. And so the book is going to be turned into a movie, right?
Yes. So I sold, well, it's very interesting because I studied screenwriting at Tisch School of the Arts in the dramatic writing program at NYU a long time ago. And screenwriting was what I hoped to do and had a passion for. I had some close calls over the years, met with some producers, some managers, met with various people who had connections and placed well in various contests, but nothing ever happened. And I made a strategic plan, in this case, to write it as a novel first and then write the screenplay second, because I thought that it would play out so well as historic fiction that I thought as an agent, I could pull in my contacts and my resources, get that published, and then leverage that into hopefully then selling the screenplay. And I went through the same hoops that everybody else did. My expertise as a literary agent is predominantly in nonfiction. So even though I do have some fiction contacts and expanded them and got to know a lot of fiction editors, and received a lot of praise for my work, it just wasn't quite the right fit for any of the houses that I approached. So I got the same rejections that everybody else usually gets, until I landed a publisher in Whitebird Publications, and they got it right away, and were so happy that the manuscript was clean. They didn't have to do much of any editing to it. Loved the story, and it all came together very, very quickly. My story with the movie is really interesting because you never know when things will happen. So you have to make your own serendipity. I went to an author event pretty much a year ago to to the day, to today. And it was in Florida before the pandemic, if such a time ever existed.
Right.
And I primarily did this as a favor for a great friend of mine, Rick Frischman, who's a well-known book marketer, book publicist. And when he asked me to do something, I jumped because I love the guy. So at this event, he helps people who want to write books. And so I became the keynote speaker at that event. And sure enough, there was somebody there who heard me speak and heard the detail of my novel coming out. And he said, "Oh, I heard that you also wrote a screenplay based on your novel." I said, "Yes, I did." He said, "Well, I know a few producers. Would you be okay if I introduced you to them?" And I thought, sure, why not? What could it hurt? I didn't think anything would happen with it. But then he joined me. He sat right next to me at dinner. He asked me more about the screenplay, asked more about me, asked for all my contact information. He said, "No, really, I will follow up with you." I said, "Okay, sure, great, fine."
And he's like, why aren't you fainting right now? Why aren't you laying all over, you know?
So, I admit I was skeptical, but as soon as I got home, he texted me, he called me, he emailed me, he said, "Send me the novel, send me the screenplay." Okay, sure. Within 2 to 3 days, I already had the request for both works from a Hollywood producer. And he said he would read both over the weekend. And I looked up the producer. He was the real deal. And sure enough, he called me the following Monday and said he wanted to create a shopper's agreement for both, for the novel and for the screenplay. And I was blown away, just absolutely blown away after all of those years of scratching and clawing at it to finally have this happen. So I'm deeply indebted to that fellow who introduced me to this producer, who for all intents and purposes now like my manager for my screenwriting projects. And so the shopper's agreement, what he does is kind of package films. So he's looking for the team that will come aboard. So he's bringing in an executive producer along with himself. He's bringing in star power, a director. He's pulling in the whole package. And I can't name names, but he's already introduced my work. Well, one I can say. He brought my work to Clint Eastwood, which was a thrill. And he got it right away and loved the screenplay. But I think he's just too tied up with commitments and probably about ready to head into the sunset with his film career. So to think that after all these years, I could even get to someone like that. So right now, this producer is working hard to package the work and bring in that star power. And so there are a lot of big names floating around. And hopefully I'll have some announcements to come very soon.
Gary, that is phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. I want to just take a moment to welcome all our viewers on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitter, on Facebook. It's great to have you here. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we want to talk to you a bit more. Gary, so we want to just draw a little bit on your past experience. When it comes to being a published author, copyright in your book is usually vested with yourself as the author or the creative. Should you, as an author, assign your copyright in full or in part to a publisher, and what are the implications of doing that?
So, as an agent, I would always advocate to my authors that you want to retain copyright to your work. There are many exceptions to that. For example, there are some publishers who have existing series in place, whether it's an academic publisher or a trade publisher, and they own the brand of that series, they own the trademark to that series, and they come up with the book ideas for each title within that series. And in most cases, they'll have an author's manual, they'll have previous books that are out there as examples, And so what they're doing is then finding writers to write the next books in that series. So in that case, I would totally understand a publisher saying, we only do a work for hire agreement and we retain copyright to the work because it's their series, their brand. In those cases, what you might be able to negotiate in your agreement is something like, if the book were to ever go out of print, that the rights would revert back to the author, and the author could do whatever he or she wants with that content as long as he or she does not use the trademark. So that content could be reshaped into some other book. And actually, I know a couple of people who have done that successfully. So it's not as if it's a completely wasted effort to go down that road. To me, the benefit of agreeing to a deal like that is if you're a writer and you want cash flow, for one thing, writing a book and getting paid for it and getting credit for it, there's something to be said for that. And if you're starting out as a writer, you might be willing to sacrifice that copyright just to get those credits, just to start out. I've known some writers, professional, very successful writers, who will agree to these terms because they're what we would call filler books. They have the books that they're very passionate about, not that they're not passionate about all their books, but they have their primary books, the ones that they're out there writing on their own and shopping around and publishing. But in between those projects, in between when they sell, they still need cash flow or need to keep busy. So those writers are more than happy to write a book, work for hire, especially if it's assigned to them from the publishing house. When you assign copyright, it gives the publisher the opportunity to use and reuse your content. And if, again, you end up assigning that copyright, you at least want to make sure that you protect yourself so that every time that that content is used, that your book title and your name is attributed with that writing. So you want to get that in your contract. There are some rare cases where there are publishers who work with authors only on the basis of retaining copyright to the work. And that is because they have a business model that obligates them to use the writer's content in their platform. They have a platform with a community of thousands of people. And so they need that content, need to be able to reuse it, not just for the book, but for all these purposes. And while it's not on the surface, that doesn't sound like a great thing to do. So an author has to balance the opportunity of working with that publisher and the exposure that that publisher is giving through that platform, because that publisher is bringing that author in for webinars, seminars, interviews. The content is showing up here, there, and everywhere. Their main objective is to link to sites for selling the book. So the author, in those cases, most of the time is still receiving a royalty. So hopefully that will help ease the blow of not only owning copyright, because you're actually getting book sales, recognition, and revenue there.
Right.
There's a lot to it, isn't there? Yeah, you really do.
So there's definitely a lot to consider. And there are some authors who will say, well, I want to get published and I don't want to lose this book deal. So I will accept this situation and not own copyright. Again, I would resist that as much as possible. But there are some exceptions when there is an opportunity to gain something from letting go of that copyright. But be very careful in that contract.
Yeah, it's good to have somebody look it over. It's good to have before you ever sign a contract, you need to have it looked over, by someone, by someone who is professional. Because a lot of times when you are in negotiating a contract, you go back and forth a little bit with the publisher or even a literary agent until, everything is set, everybody's happy, and it takes a little bit of time. It's, not always boom, you read a contract, everything's perfect, and then you sign it. That does happen though, as well. But yes, always get it looked over and make sure that everything's fair.
Well, and to that point, I have seen big publishing companies have terrible contracts, and I've seen small independent publishing companies have wonderful contracts. So they run the gamut from here to there, and every publisher will say, well, this is the norm in business. This is the norm for publishing. This is how it's always done, which of course is not really true, because every publisher has their own business model. They have their own legal departments. They have their own contract authorities, and they make the decisions based on what's best for them, not what's best for the author.
Best for you, yeah.
But so further your point, Mary, yes, you definitely want someone to look over your contract, but don't necessarily just get an attorney to do it, because you are going to be throwing a lot of money away if you get an entertainment attorney who is not familiar with book publishing contracts, because they don't understand the language. They don't understand the things that don't mean anything. So they're fighting for things that have no ramifications. And they're basically just adding to their billing and dragging the process out and then upsetting the publisher. And believe me, I've run contract departments of publishing houses and have been in that situation many times, where attorneys come to me and ask for the most outrageous things. And I could tell they don't know what they're doing, but I can't say to an author, your agent doesn't know what she's doing. Like, that's just, you be polite, you're professional, and you try to work things out as best as you can. I always say to every author, you don't get if you don't ask. And so it doesn't hurt to ask. And there's always a give and take. I would say that of the 50 to 60 publishers that I've done deals with in my own business, there's only one that I could not do the agreement. There's only one where I couldn't negotiate it. And I told the author that you can sign this if you like, but I can't recommend that you do. It's your choice. You can do what you like, but there's just too much in here. And that author followed my recommendation and published elsewhere. So I can't name who that publisher is, but
right, of course, for the safety of your life. No, I'm kidding. But, we want to let everybody know where they can find you. And I know we need an hour with you, Gary, so we have to have you back on, because
I would love to.
Yes,
there's so much to talk about.
There is so much to talk about. Yes.
And I am doing an event January 16th to 17th called Journey to Success, and that is going to have about.
I'll be there.
Yeah, 30 plus book agents, published authors, publishing professionals answering all kinds of questions will be there. So I hope everyone can join in on that. It's called the Journey to Success, and it's sponsored by True Living, and January 16th and 17th. And my email address, you asked for that. It's,
okay, where can people find you? Yeah,
it's Gary M. Krebs, spelled just like it is on the screen without the periods altogether, at gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Gary, thank you so much. We look forward to having you back on the show soon again.
It was my pleasure. I'm sorry if my cat interrupted.
No worries.
She was clawing at me at various points. I don't know if you can tell, but
no worries. Take care, everyone.
Great. Thanks for having me. Great seeing you guys. Thank you.
Pleasure.